And welcome back to the channel where we talk about only good comics. I'm Brant, and this is a top five video because we did not have an episode of Comic Book Weekly this week. I thought it would be fun to just go through my top five picks for the week and share those with you on this channel, which is something that I hope to do every time we do miss a Comic Book Weekly, and I just never get around to actually doing it. But this week I thought I would. I'd give it a shot. And I apologize for the glasses. My eyes are a little fuzzy tonight, so and I got to look at the screen, so I want to make sure that I don't have to squint and have you waiting in this video, and I don't have to edit it too much. So that'd be great. But anyway, if you're not familiar with Comic Book Weekly, it's a show that I do with Kat and Mike every Tuesday night, or most Tuesday nights, where we talk about our top five picks of the week. We discuss other big books of the week, and we talk about comic news and all of that stuff. I'm not going to do like the full show on my own here, but I was really looking forward to the show, and then for various reasons, all three of us could not make the show. So this week, so I thought it would be fun to just kind of go through my top five and maybe talk about a few other books here and there as well. So kind of a mini version of CBW. So um, yeah, so I read a bunch of books this week, a whole lot of books, like more than usual. There were even a couple I didn't get to. It was one of the bigger weeks for me. So it was really hard to pick my top five, but I tried to go with like what I was feeling when I was reading these books, and like the enjoyment level that I had at those moments. And I'll try to express that a little bit. So I do have those five, and there are, like I said, a handful of other books that I'll probably bring up as well, since we didn't get to talk about those this week. Um, so yeah, I'll start with. This is not one of my top five. I'll start with just one of the other books that I read that surprised me that I enjoyed. One of them was a distillery book called Time Waits, and this is by Chip Zdarsky, and it was a little bit slow to begin with, and I didn't really know where it was going. It didn't quite make my top five, but it is my top 10. Uh, but it was like I said, it was a slower build to get to the plot of it. But once you really got into it, I felt like I was drawn to the character, and there's a lot of relatable scenes in here. This guy has obviously had some trauma from the war, and he's just kind of trying to make his life work. He's trying to get ready for an anniversary. He's learning how to bake, and he's decorating the cake, and all this just like normal stuff. But then in the midst of this, there's these flashes. He's blacking out left and right, and he doesn't understand why. And he's when he blacks out, these memories are happening, but you kind of get the impression that when he blacks out, he's actually going into these time periods. Maybe he's time traveling when he's unconscious. I don't really know. It's left a little vague, little for you to kind of fill in the blanks. Maybe they'll explain it later on as we go through the series. But really strong start to the series for me. I felt like once you got about halfway in, you're like I said, hooked to the character, and you kind of want to know what's going on with the plot. So, kudos to Chip Zdarsky Distillery for Time Waits because it did pull me in, and now I'm curious and I want to know more. All right, so let's talk about my number five, which I believe was Cat's pick of the week, if I'm not mistaken. But that is Red Before Black, issue number two. This is from Boom Studios by Stephanie Phillips, becoming one of my favorite writers right now in comics, whether it's indie or mainstream. And the first issue was really strong. It was about this woman that came back, connected with an old ally, but there's some mystery behind her. She's there for other purposes that kind of slowly get revealed through the issue. I don't want to spoil it too much, but and we also start off with that old poem about snakes. Red Before Black. Um, I can't remember how it goes, but it's red before yellow, kiss a fellow, red before black, um, you know, whatever it is. There's different versions of it. Basically, if you see a snake that has red before black, it's deadly, which is not, it's a misnomer. It's not actually true because there's so many varieties of snakes that since that poem was popular, that that's not always the case, and sometimes, if you just go by that, it's dead. But anyway, my point is, it definitely involves the snake. Snake has been on both covers, both main covers, I believe. It's going to play into it some way, somehow. And you don't know what else is going on, especially by the way that this issue ends. It almost feels like there's a little bit something more, whether it's psychological or whether it's supernatural. You're not sure yet, which is a very interesting, direction to take it. In this issue, we get a little bit more insight as to where our character Valeria, or uh, Valeria, however you want to pronounce it, Val for short, um, comes from, how she got to this point, where she was prior, and why she's back in her old friends, her old buddies' life, and what her mission is. And what I also really like about this issue and this character is that Val is not just some super soldier that can't be beat. She kind of gets bested in this issue. There's a fight between the two characters on the cover. That's Val and Leo, and Leo kind of bests her and just like surprises her. And I love that she didn't just come out here, straight into the lion's den and just kick butt. Because last issue she kicked a lot of butt. In this issue, even in the flashback, she kicked some butt. But that wasn't, you know what I'm saying. It's like she's not a superhero or supervillain or any like action movie will lead you to believe that like the protagonist just is like supernaturally just skilled and unable to be harmed and all this stuff. And she's not that. She's very human, and I love that aspect of the book. But just really well crafted, really nice balance between the flashbacks and the present stuff, kind of leading you up to where it's going and still leaving you on that cliffhanger. Really strong start for these two issues for the series, and I'm really enjoying this one. So that is my number 5. All right, we'll talk about another book that did not make my top 5, but that I did enjoy. Let's see, we'll go with just looking through my list here. Uncanny X-Men number 2, just outside my top 5. It was my number 6. Um, I really loved the first issue. This issue was a lot of um, kind of that typical, okay, these superheroes encounter these superhero or these superpower people encounter these superpower people. Let's fight before we talk and discuss everything. Let's let tempers flare, and then go from there. It was tried and true format, all that kind of stuff, but it resulted in a very action heavy issue that left us with more questions than answers, I felt. And that's fine. It's a little bit more decompressed than I thought it would be with these characters, but we did learn a little bit about the outliers, and that some of them are mutants, some of them might not be, and somebody is hunting all of them, and we find out kind of who that person is by the end of this issue, but it's very vague. I just didn't feel like it was paced quite as well as the first issue. And again, you had the focus on Wolverine, Gambit, and Rogue, these classic, um, X-Men characters that were really big in the '90s, very nostalgic, and even now today they are some of the more popular characters of the X-Men. And you had this, nice scaled down story that you were telling with them, and then you start to expand it with all of these characters, but so far they haven't had room to breathe. And granted, it's only one issue. We haven't really seen, we haven't really been able to dissect everything with them. So I don't know. It wasn't as strong as the first issue. It was still good. Still trust Gail Simone. Still like the storytelling. Still like these characters, that their abilities seem a little bit more unique, and they're kind of just thrown together. They're not like they're makeshift family, but they're a very recent family. And one of the dudes just like stood up to Wolverine and someone made a point in the script to kind of call that out, that he was squaring up with Wolverine, and he kind of stood toe to toe with Wolverine for a little bit. So these characters are interesting so far. Um, but yeah, we'll see where it goes, and hopefully it'll creep back up into my top five. So my number four then is The Domain, issue number three. This is also by Chip Zdarsky, uh, but in story, it's written by Miles Dallas and Tanya. Uh, is it? I can't. I think I can't remember if it's Ho or Co. I can't quite make it out because of the scratch through there, and I don't have it in front of me right now. But through the fictional creative team that is in the public domain series, right? So this issue, it's a lot about the aliens that the technology comes from, that these three people have gotten the power from. They've got these gauntlets and they can share the power. And they have one of these aliens captured, but then there's a whole other group of aliens that are against these aliens that are hunting the tech down. But this alien is trying to explain to them why it's so deadly and what exactly they've gotten themselves into. And so there's that um, kind of thing where this alien is not giving up too much information, but trying to scare them so that they'll give it back to him. And he's trying to warn them at the same time, but it's not going so well. And then you have some breakdowns between some of the characters. One character in particular kind of goes off book and gets themselves into a little bit of trouble with their use of the power in that situation. Something that characteristically they might not have done before, but they had been pushed to their limit and just let it out, and it was kind of an immature response, and it got all of them in trouble, and it got the other group of aliens that are hunting them kind of on their scent. So I'm really liking where this is going, especially because of the way that it ties into public domain, how this particular story hasn't quite debuted yet in public domain, and now that there's some opposition where there's apparently a mole in the Dallas offices to where their competition knows what they're about to do. It might thwart their plans or beat them to market or that kind of thing. So it's really interesting that we're reading the book that is birthed out of that book. So it's I love the concept, and also it's just a really good book. So all right, we'll go on to my number three before I talk about any other books. So um, my number three is Transformers issue number 12. This is the end of the second arc, and this is the big battle between our Autobots and our Decepticons. Last issue, Ultra Magnus got freaked out when he saw Shockwave and drove away, couldn't even deal. And at the same time, you have Soundwave questioning Shockwave's decisions and judgments. You have a couple of people on Optimus's side kind of not agreeing with him or challenging him. So there's dissension within the ranks on both sides, and it doesn't end well. Let's just say that. You also have Carly, who has been sidelined more times than she cares to be, and now in this issue, she's like, to heck with that. I'm getting involved, whether you like it or not. I'm here. I'm helping deal with it. And I love that because we kind of got away from the human story that was so strong in that first arc. And it's nice to get back to that and those characters because we really need that aspect of it, I think, in this book to make it completely well rounded. But at the same time, I really enjoyed this issue and Optimus struggling with what is the right thing to do here. And one of his own kind of does something to upset the apple cart, basically, and almost traps him on Cybertron. And his decision to protect Earth has consequences both for Earth and for Cybertron and for the Autobots and the Transformers as a whole. And it could have been a very big mistake. And also, there's something happening with Optimus. He kind of loses his cool and he goes over the top. And I personally think that it's the Megatron arm or the arm cannon that is somehow infecting his code or whatever is kind of twisting him and turning him. I don't know if that's the case, but that's kind of my suspicions on this because he just goes to a place that you don't normally see Optimus go. But really strong into this arc, especially if it's going to take a break to leave us on the cliffhanger that we got, and it also ties into the lore of Cybertron, how it was damaged and part of it missing and everything. I think we just saw how that happens in this issue, which I think is pretty cool. And also, if you tie this into the larger Energon universe, Unicron's kind of creeping out there as well. So really building up things strong for the Energon universe, and a phenomenal way to end the second arc. All right, let's talk about Geiger real quick. This is issue number 6, and this was the epilogue to the first arc, where last issue we saw the two-headed dog Barney get really hurt by the electrician. And this issue, and you didn't know whether Barney lived or not. And this issue, thankfully, Barney still alive and kicking, but not quite the same. Has become very docile, just can't deal. And this issue is all about basically Barney getting his mojo back, basically. And it's just like mostly silent. You have a little bit of Geiger and Nate talking, and you have some hunters that are after these animals talking. But mostly it's just kind of this nonverbal communication between Barney and these other animals. There's a zoo that all the animals have gotten out and everything, and Barney comes across this zoo, but there's these poachers that are coming after these animals, and there's a bunch of dead animals everywhere. And he kind of befriends like this gorilla and these other characters, and they just have this beautiful moment where they kind of connect on this, I don't know, this mental level that they know they can relate to each other, and he kind of inspires an uprising for these zoo animals. And from that point on, it's the lore. You don't go to that zoo if you have bad intentions, because they will know. And it was a really fun story, really heartwarming story for Barney, and I really enjoyed it. All right, so my number 2 then is Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles issue number 2. This by Jason Aaron with art by Raphael Albuquerque. And this issue completely focused on Michaelangelo. So the first issue was all about Raph in prison and dealing with all that. And this one is about Mikey, who is really upset with his brothers for kind of causing the family to break apart. But he's made the best of it. He's traveled to Japan. He's become a big TV star. He's got a hit series. He's recognized everywhere. He's wined and dined at night. He's living the celebrity life, right? But when he's back at his apartment, his penthouse, he's eating frozen pizza, and he's just lonely. And he kind of goes through all that in his head. It's really beautiful the way that he breaks it down. He talks about being the life of the party and all this stuff, but then it slowly seeps out how not just alone, but how angry he is, and how he just wants to be with his brothers again. And you can see the way that this is structured and the way that his thought process is. This is the same kind of thinking that leads this character to be the character we saw in The Last Ronin. So some beautiful symmetry between those ideals of Mikey. And so by the end of it, like, he gets drugged, and there's like these new ninjas coming at him, and then you don't know what's real, what's not. And I don't know. I don't want to spoil it too much, but it seems like maybe we're on the road to getting the family back together. So a really strong issue. I do wish Mikey's face had been drawn a little bit better. It was a little bit flat for a turtle. But other than that, it was a nitpick. I really enjoyed the book. I'm immensely enjoying this series so far. This new take on the turtles. And I love the scale down individual focus. And once we get them back together, I hope we don't lose some of that. I hope there's like some tension and stuff like that. I would love to see that kind of married together, because sometimes when we get TMNT stories, it's a lot about the action. You'll get one-liners here and there, but you don't really delve deep into anyone really but Raph. So I'm looking forward to all of these characters kind of having their own individual journeys, right? So I believe next issue is Leo, and I'm really looking forward to that as well. All right, so let's see. What else do we want to talk about? Um, let's talk about. I'm trying to think of. Let's see. We'll talk about Wolverine issue 1 because that was a big book. Actually, you know what? I'm gonna save that for Friday first because um, that was that it's obviously a first issue. So I'll save that one for Friday first. We will talk about Shazam issue number 15. Um, this saw Billy finally kind of accepting the captain. So they had kind of become separate entities, right? So the captain, um, we kind of got the revelation as to why he had been separate and why there had been such a struggle and why he had been hiding things from Billy and all of this stuff. All that came to a head in this issue and it got reconciled and he was able to kind of embrace it and come to the rescue once again. So Mary Marvel's getting taken down, Shazam is back in it, and they're still overwhelmed. They're still, not being able to quite match the force that is coming at them, which enters the third factor into this that leaves us with a cliffhanger. I don't want to spoil that for anybody that hasn't read it, but it's been a long time coming. We've had this journey of this particular character that has been upset about their powers being gone and being the one that's kind of left out. Um, when they felt like they're the ones that needed it or deserved it the most. And yeah, we see an interesting way that those powers come to be and a different kind of costume, uniform, whatever you want to call it, based on the application of those powers. I'm trying to be really big without giving this away. If you read it, you know what I'm trying to say. But it was exciting seeing this character come in at the end, and I can't wait to read next issue so we can see how all three of these come together, and if they all three get to keep their powers, and if they're all coming from this. I mean, we already know that Mary's is coming from a different set of gods, uh, and than Billy's. So is this third, siblings coming from a different set of gods, or is it coming from this artifact, or whatever it is? It's going to be interesting to see how that plays out. Also, well, no, I'll save that for Friday first as well. Batman and Robin issue number 13. It was a pretty solid ending to this arc. This wasn't my favorite arc, but the bits and pieces that we got about Damian and Bruce and how they kind of connect now and how they've come so far in their journey and how they are acting like father and son now. That has been the golden part of this arc, and we got a really nice finishing to that particular part of this story in this issue. And I believe now it's either being relaunched or new creative teams coming on or something like that. So this was the end of this arc, but it was also the end of this creative team's run on this title. And next we're going all in, right? So it was there was a nice kind of I don't know how to put it, but basically, let me just back up. Basically, we're still on Dinosaur Island. You have Batman and Robin fighting against Bane and his daughter. I can't think of her name right now, but they realize that. So, last issue, Damian decided not to take Bane's life, and he was going through all kinds of hurt because of Alfred and all that stuff, right? So this issue, he gets shot with this venom. He gets turned into a roided out Bane monster like character, and Batman's trying to talk him down. Bane's daughter's trying to egg him on, and Bane is trying to say, "Enough of this. I'm willing to pay for my crimes." Right. So there's this whole thing, and then the Cult of Cobra, who are going to be in JSA soon, come in, and then Batman and Bane have to team up, which never thought I'd see that. But in the in between of all of this, which was very action heavy, very bombastic, over the top kind of art styles and all that stuff, was Damien post all of this. It was kind of going back and forth, and there was some narration going on. Damien's sitting in his school counselor's office, who we never see the counselor, and I think that's going to lead to something. Who knows? Maybe it's just a normal person. He thinks it's a normal person, but he's being asked, has he discovered himself? He's so smart, but he misses so much school. Doesn't need to live in the shadow of his dad, and all this stuff, and what he's learned from this, and all of this thing, and you get this nice kind of revelatory moment from Damien where he's like, you know what, me and Dad, we're okay now. We've been through some stuff, and but yeah, I've realized that I've got a family and I'm surrounded by people that love me. And that was just like a huge kind of light bulb for Damien. And to come to that conclusion for him and to realize this and to feel safe was really nice. It also feels like, okay, now that he's there, we're just going to rip that right out from underneath him because it's a comic book, right? So we'll see what happens with Damien going forward. But that's where he's at now, and I thought it was a beautiful way to end that story. Okay. That's the last book I'm going to talk about before my number one pick, which is, maybe surprisingly, Avengers Assemble issue number 1. Steve Orlando writing this, same writer that writes the Scarlet Witch series. You all know, if you watch this channel any length of time, that I really am a big fan of the Scarlet Witch runs. And this book had very similar vibes to that, but very different as well, because that was very magic. There was some magic here with Sin stealing this artifact, and Sin being the daughter of the Red Skull, and all of that part of it. But what I loved about this book was that it was a throwback to those days where you had the Avengers Mansion, which they are back in this series, where people would just be, Avengers would be just sitting around, being normal, flirting with each other, joking with each other, playing games, all this kind of stuff. And some would be on missions, and others would be back there dealing with their stuff and all this stuff. And that's what this reminded me of. It felt like classic Avengers stories to me, but with fresh paint on it, and with characters that we've never seen be active, full Avengers members involved here, like Night Thrasher, like Lightspeed, aka Julie Powers, and Shang-Chi. And then we have, your classic characters like Hercules and Wonder Man and She-Hulk and Wasp and etc. So it was a really fun read. You had the first 4 people that showed up, which was Captain America, Shang-Chi, Wasp, and Photon, going off to fight Red Skull's daughter, while the rest just kind of, filed in, randomly, and just ended up playing poker. And it was just a fun issue. There was still a story going on. There's still this villain that they have to face. But at the same time, you just had this nice, laid back kind of subplot going on with these characters just kind of getting to know each other, which was refreshing. And it made me wish this was not just a 5-issue miniseries, that this was an ongoing series. I would love to see that. I would love to see this book continue. You can keep the other team with Jed McKay, have them fight the big stuff. This can be like their, I don't know, an offshoot. Just call it Avengers Assemble, call it, whatever. I don't care. New Avengers, Uncanny, I don't care what you call it. Just keep it. Because it was a really fun issue, and I really enjoyed it quite a lot. Obviously, it's my number 1 pick, and it surprised me, and just made me long for this kind of storytelling and adventures again. So, and that's it. That's my top 5 for this week. I hope you enjoyed this little extra video from me this week. And since, again, I didn't get to do CBW this week, I still got to share my top 5, still got to talk about a few other books with you as well. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please give that a thumbs up, and hit that subscribe notification bell so you don't miss any of the other content going up on this channel. Of course, you can follow me across social media at Only Good Comics, and type in onlygoodcomics.com to take you right back to this YouTube channel where we talk about only good comics. Until next time, thanks for watching. Keep reading those comics, and come back for Friday First this Friday. See you real soon.